Welcome everyone for coming. This is kind of a special presentation meeting on a couple of topics. Congress Park Neighbors is an RNO. We are completely neutral about either of the presentations this evening. We're providing information for the neighborhood. The meeting is being recorded, so it'll be available on our website after the meeting. Please direct your questions to the chat. Brian Toerber is here, and he's going to talk about his project with the Inn Motel on Colfax. So go ahead, Brian.
All right, thank you, Vicki. So let me try this tech out, sharing screen. Let me know if anything is successful on your end. Okay. So you're not seeing anything, I see.
Not yet.
No, not yet.
Maggie, have you?
I've hit
the share screen button.
I've made you a co-host, and the co-hosts can share. So there's not a whole lot more than I can do.
Is it a PDF? Could somebody send something?
I have it in both PDF and PowerPoint. So if I sent a PDF instead, could you just load it up that way on your end, Maggie?
I can.
Okay. That'll take a minute for me to find the document on PDF. Hold on a second. Talk amongst yourselves. All right, let's see here.
Once you find the video, you should be able to click on it and then we can see it.
Maggie, what's your email? Or what's the email I should send it to?
Send it to mprice9980@aol.com.
So mprice9980@aol.com.
That's right.
Okay. It's on its way. Yeah, it says something on my screen about open system preferences, and it brings up an area of screen sharing, but I'll continue to do this while you load up that.
You want to start telling us about your project?
Yeah, so basically it's about 11 slides I like to share with you, but essentially what we've done, it's been a long year and a half since COVID. We were, and I have shared in the past with other RNOs, so I'm glad to get the opportunity to sit in front of you all tonight, just to tell you about what we've been working on at this site for the last several years. We went through a lot of different iterations of what we wanted to do there, and we've ultimately settled on a renovation of this current motel into a new boutique hotel. And so we've got 81 keys that we'll eventually have. It'll be an independently branded hotel. And it'll be a full renovation of the existing shell. We're going to add a new structure to the east. And then between the two structures, it'll essentially be 81 keys. Full renovation, about a $27 million project that we're looking to invest. And we got it on the historic register because what was very important to us is to preserve the integrity of the historic nature of that building. We felt that the best use for the neighborhood was to keep the existing building there, but to clean it up rather than to tear it down and put something else there that we didn't feel that would fit the neighborhood as well as we believe this new project will. So that's essentially what we have. Let me know if you've got that. I'd like to start kind of walking through the slides and show you the site development plan.
I've got it, but I seem to be having some problems sharing too. So give me a minute. Just keep on talking.
Okay. So essentially, we're going to preserve the name, the All Inn Hotel. It'll have two components to it. We'll have renovated rooms upstairs. We're going to bring back the ground level. There was a former restaurant called the Gold Room. So we're going to bring the restroom concept back. It'll be, we're not quite sure what the menu items will be there, but it'll be about 110 seat restaurant.
I'm sharing now.
So what you see here, perfect. This is kind of the lettering that we're choosing for the hotel and a little bit of the branding of the hotel. We're partnering with Semple Brown as the architect. Myself, Inspire Investment Group is my company. New Waterloo is a company based in Austin. So when we kind of went down this path, we wanted to find an operator who had experience not only in boutique, independently branded hotels, but also had a really strong food and beverage background. When I went down and kind of got into this project, a lot of people encouraged me to check out Austin, specifically South Congress. South Congress is a little bit like East Colfax. It's a main thoroughfare through Austin, and it's got a very great historical, lot of independent businesses. And there's a couple of groups that do hotels down there. One is New Waterloo. They've got South Congress Hotel. They got Hotel Ellen. I don't know if anybody's been to Austin, but if you have, you may have eaten at one of their many establishments. Sway, La Condesa, El Bruto. These are just a few of their food concepts. So it has encouraged me to go down there and meet with these guys. And I sat down with them about 3 years ago to come up with a design and thought. And we kind of went back and forth between, do we really want to do a hotel? Is East Colfax prepared and ready for a hotel? And how would it be received within the community? And once we felt pretty confident that we thought it was a good project there, we, of course, lending environment with boutique hotels was difficult. Not a lot of lenders like hotels that don't have a flag, but I thought it was important to not have a flag. If you want to go back to the other slide, I'm going to walk you through the site development plan. So this is basically the lot that we sit on, as you know it. Lower left corner of that is the existing shell. You're looking at the ground level, so you see the restaurant concept in the middle. You walk in through Colfax into a vestibule. To the right's going to be the lobby check-in, kind of lobby bar. This will be an area where you can sit down, meet with friends, have a cocktail, some light beverage, kind of a neighborhood lounge, if you will. Not lounge, but sitting area where you can work, power up a laptop, etc. To the left of that, or to the west of that, is the actual restaurant concept that we'll put together. And then the porte-cochere, if you continue further right, so you're heading east, to your right along the bottom there, we've got the existing porte-cochere. We felt that was kind of interesting to basically keep and refresh. Further right, we're going to have a swimming pool concept for not only the hotel, but any neighbors that want to participate and come and hang out and swim. Day passes allowed. We'll have a poolside cafe, drinks and things that we'll be able to serve at the pool during the day, weekends. However, I'm not sure what the hours will be of the pool, but certainly during the summer, we want to activate that. We envision live bands, partnering with local companies, certainly partnering with the Bluebird Theater. We want to be a kind of an extension of the environment, the scene, the energy of Colfax at this hotel across the board. And then on the far right's a new building that we have planned. We're going to have kind of a coffee, donut, pastry, all made in-house, and that what looks to be identified as Hotel West Retail. That's going to be a coffee shop, actually. And then rooms above that as well. Both are 4 stories. They'll be connected, and then we're fully parked in the back. And that was important for us to make sure we had plenty of parking. We didn't want to load up any of the neighborhood with any excess parking. So we made sure to have surface area parking to service both the hotel and the concepts on the main floor. And you want to go to the next slide. This is an old photo, actually, that was, or an old rendering of when this originally was constructed in the 50s. It was actually constructed by the, I believe it was the Brugger family. They have a history in Denver. They designed this as a motor hotel, a motor court hotel. So you have the pass through. This is the original design. What we're going to do is replicate this. We'll have the main entrance, new storefront where essentially that stucco outshoot, we're going to cut all that back down and put in new storefront, but keeping, the window lights that come in on the front. All this stone will be refreshed, but kept. We wanted to keep the original facade, interesting lighting on the left, kind of shining on the building, and then refresh new skin up top, and then brand new guest rooms built out within it. So this was originally built as the Fountain Inn, and that's where we put it on the register back in July as the Fountain Inn. So this is now on the historic register. And you can go to the next slide. Maggie, can you zoom, or can you scroll it? There we go, perfect.
There you go, sorry.
There, and there is now kind of what it's going to look like. This is a night vision, an illustration of the night vision, so fully activated and lit up on the ground level. You can see the porte-cochere will be lit up. That'll be an entrance from the back parking lot into the lobby bar area, if you will. In the middle of that, we're going to put new motel neon signage. We're going to basically refresh the existing sign. And I'll show you some renderings of that. Behind that illuminated sign is where the pool is going to sit. And then the building to the right, what we wanted to do there was make it similar, but not exact. We wanted to complement the existing building. So that's the new building with the coffee shop, lower level, grab and go, like I said, ice cream, donuts, pastries. New Waterloo's got a fantastic chef. She's actually been on Bobby Flay, and she's won awards. So she's going to come in and create the design of the pastry shop and the coffee shop and the donuts, et cetera. And then above that are 3 stories of room. So although we're zoned for larger mass here, we wanted to really keep the scale of the building intact. So 4 stories rather than 5. We didn't want to alter anything on the existing, the historic site. We wanted to complement that with the new. So although there was more density, obviously, that would be allowed on site, we thought it was important to kind of keep the density low and have it be more of a neighborhood gem, kind of a location spot where people can hang out that doesn't overwhelm the neighborhood and certainly doesn't overrun your neighborhood and City Park South as well. So we settled on this 81 keys just to get enough density where the project theoretically would be feasible, but yet small enough and quaint enough and boutique enough that it would feel intimate. On the next slide. Here's a daylight shot of it. So this is the new building and kind of a stucco / brick. You can't see the brick accents on this, but they're located on the front Colfax facing side and then the side around the corner on St. Paul. Fully glass kind of opening for the coffee shop. And the next slide kind of shows you the other corner of the existing. So this is a total refresh, kind of light skin, hiding in a new paint, a new refresh, new windows that match the historic windows. And all of our plans have already been adopted and approved by History Colorado and the National Park Service. So these are the plans that they've reviewed and approved. The stairwells, which we love, we're going to refresh, new lighting on those. Our units, condensing units, will be on top, kind of hidden from street view, and then we'll, of course, repave around the entire site. Next slide. And this is just a front shot again of the buildings. And then you can go down to the next slide. So now we're kind of getting into just some fun fit finish branding concepts of what, you know, these rooms kind of will built out. That upper left is actually a mock room that we've created in the motel, just to kind of get a sense on how things pull together. We're still working through the nuances of that. Lower right, where the toilet kind of tile, the penny tile in the shower area, and then really just using some of the same lettering topography that exists today and refreshing that. So we hired a branding company out of Austin to help us with the complete brand of this hotel. And so a lot of this inspiration comes from them. You can kind of scroll down and you get the feel of kind of the leather for the all-in hotel, some inspirational photos of kind of how it'll look and feel. Again, the mock room up on the upper right, still working through color things, and they're making some minor changes to that. And then one more slide down. And then kind of how it's going to look and feel from the outside. So this is kind of bringing back some of the East Colfax and Colfax neon signs that I know that are kind of the history of it, but give it a fresh new look. We really love the name All In because we're kind of all in on Colfax. And this has a meaning that's close in heart to me, but also is the existing name. So we love the name. And so it is going to remain the All In Hotel, All In on East Colfax, All In on Colfax. And these are just some signage that I think we're leaning towards for the, you know, that pillar that sits out front. And then if you go down to the last slide, this is kind of just some additional lighting at night that you'll see. So we've got the west facing wall on the existing building, All In on Colfax. We'll have the motel sign. So we're really excited. I know that it's taken a long time to get to this point. I think, you know, it may not show it, but it's been a lot of, it's been a challenge to get it to this point for many reasons. Obviously, COVID had the biggest impact on financing that dried up for about a year and a half. So I appreciate the neighborhood just being as patient. I assure you, we weren't just sitting on a site there and doing nothing, although it's just taken quite a while, frankly, to kind of get things lined up and moving forward. So now we're at a point where we anticipate that we would formally shut this down by the end of this year and begin our reconstruction of the hotel in 2022, probably a 14 to 16 month build out and open sometime in the summer of 2023.
Thank you, Brian. Aren't there currently occupants in the hotel?
Yeah, so that's actually a really important thing for us to be considering. So I've been working with the Kim family. We've got a complete rent roll of all the occupants today that live at the motel. And what I've committed to is finding replacement, working with the agencies of Denver to pay for relocation in 1 month of rent. We're still working through some of the details of this with every single individual that's there today. Most of the individuals that are there today, there's a few that have been there longer term, but most are week to week. Obviously, there's some that are there for just one night, but most are week to week. So we've got a complete list. We're actually moving the Kim family that's been operating on a site to West Colfax because we wanted to make sure they had gainful employment to continue to manage and to support their lifestyles, but also really taking care of those that are using this as housing. So nobody's going to be displaced. I mean, they're going to have options to relocate within the same type of accommodations that I hope, if not better than they're used to living. So we're taking that very seriously.
I have one more question. Anyone, please enter questions in the chat, and I'm sure Brian would be happy to answer. You have 81 keys. How many parking spaces are you building out, surface parking?
So we have 56 spaces for parking and 1 car share space in the back that we'll have for the area. So
what happens to the overflow if you're full, have no vacancy?
I think those are, that's something I think we're going to have to see where the parking demand actually is from night to night. I think we're more than adequately parked given the feasibility that we've done there at 75% occupancy. We anticipate a lot won't be driving to this location. So car sharing and mass transit, we're going to rely on a lot of that as well. If it gets to a point where parking becomes an issue, we'll have to look for partnerships in along the area on Colfax that have an abundance of parking and maybe work out some details with those guys. So we'll kind of take that as it comes.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So thank you, Brian, for the presentation. I love the retro. I think you're keeping something that's quite unique, and in 20 years, these buildings won't exist anymore, if even now. But I think it's a little, in looking at your original images of the front of the building, the secondary building looks as large as the main hotel, yet when I look at the site plan, it looks like it's just this little nub of a building.
Yeah.
So in reality, does that building cross over the parking lot? Is there parking below it? Or is that new building actually just a short little building? Because the images, it looks quite large.
Yeah, it's actually a short, small building. It's about half the size in square footage. So the best way to look at it is the second or third slide down. It's the top-down view. If you keep scrolling up towards the beginning of the presentation, I would say right here is the best way to show it. So in relation to each other, it's about half the size of square foot because not only the building, but the porte-cochere. So really the existing building there, you'd be looking from the top down where it says outdoor lounge and existing porte-cochere and all that to the left. So in relation to what's there, you see the size. There's no parking below that. It doesn't cantilever over the parking. So it's probably 65, 70 feet by 40 feet if I were just, but it's, that's the relation on the site. It's a much smaller building.
Okay. No, that's fine. Because I was concerned is if the building went all the way to the property line, you have residences behind there. But it looks like you've got a lot of space there. So that, I think that works out quite well.
Yeah, quite a bit of space between both buildings and the property line behind us, yeah.
Anyone
Appreciate your
else?
question.
Hi, Vicky. It's Dean. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Dean.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Just a quick question on price point. Maybe I missed it in your presentation. Is this going to be comparable to, like, what's a comparable chain type price point for this hotel?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think one of the challenges that I always had is I've got asked that question quite a bit. It was like, point to a hotel in Denver that you think is very similar. And I don't know that I would point to anything like the Ramble in Rhino or the Source. I think they're going for a price point that's, maybe on average in the summertime, 300 plus, and, maybe it's mid 200 total ADR. What we're coming in at is probably opening, or at least we hope that we'll hit an opening ADR somewhere in that average of 170 to 180 a night. 170 is what we anticipate based on our feasibility study. Summer times are going to be more popular, and the winter time is going to be much cheaper, but on average, I think that's the price point we're going for. There aren't any really boutique independently branded hotels that I think we fit in, but if you're familiar with other types, such as maybe the Ace Hotel, I would say it could maybe look and feel a lot like the Ace product. There's Seattle, Portland, Nashville, they've got a lot of these types of independently branded hotels. We just don't have a lot in Denver that I could point to and say that's it.
Okay.
I'm certainly not going after anything like a Marriott feel. It really is truly an independently branded hotel.
So a follow-up question to that, and maybe it's just an idea for revenue for you. I have a place in Winter Park, and there's a small Gravity House just opened in Winter Park, and I know they're around the country, and they're doing a membership type offering as well, so people can come do some things there. But the Clayton that just opened in Cherry Creek is also doing memberships for use of pool and a private lounge type thing. It may just be an idea because Congress Park has a pool, but it's also very kid oriented and obviously no alcohol, that kind of thing. But there may be opportunity for certain members of the neighborhood that would be willing to do a membership type deal to your pool and things.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dean. Those are all great. Those are conversations that have come up from time to time. And I think what I'd really would love to hear collectively is your R&O is some suggestions and feedback, on kind of how this is branded and the direction we've gone with this. And, do you like it and do you support it? And do you think it's a good fit for the neighborhood? And we've gotten a lot of good feedback from City Park South, which is, the neighborhood we sit in. But since we're so close, we're just across the street from you. It's really just as much your, neighborhood hotel as it is City Park's neighborhood hotel. So any feedback, suggestions, I think would be warranted. This is a small family business. It's me and I'm the primary owner, and we're going to align with this group in Austin just because they have extensive, background in managing these types of hotels. We wanted to keep this really just not corporate. We just really want to focus on keeping it, family oriented, just a really fun but low key vibe, I guess. Any other questions? I'd love to answer more. I would also love, Vicki, to hear from you if you have an opportunity to poll the individuals that are on the call and just, how many of you believe would be in support of this.
Does anyone have any more comments?
We've been hearing this at INC lately. Do you have any good neighbor agreements with South City Park at all, or anyone talking about that type of a thing?
Good neighbor agreements covering, can you give me an example?
Oh, it's normally for maybe liquor or bars or whatever, where the neighbors, they come to an agreement on how late people will be out if there's an outdoor patio. But the thing is, you're against Colfax, so you don't have like a patio against residential areas. So I would see less conflict. So it sounds like they haven't moved forward with anything. So
that's never actually been brought up. I've probably been to 4 or 5 different meetings and in City Park. I do anticipate that will be, nights and weekends we may have small intimate bands playing inside. Maybe somebody that is performing at the Bluebird, their band may wish to stay here, and maybe just some fun, spur of the moment, quick hour present. Who knows where this can go? But as far as the type of, weekend activation, night activation, we're certainly trying to keep it, low key. But we haven't had those conversations. So I think that's a good, probably opportunity during construction to sit down with, stakeholders and just get a feel for, what they like to see on Colfax from a nightlife versus, when is expected quiet time. I haven't personally had those conversations with our operator yet. And a lot of the programming is just inspirational, aspirational. We haven't really dialed it in yet.
Brian, hey, Charles Nussbaum here. Hey, quick, is there any roof activation? I mean,
no, yeah.
No opportunity for that, because that's obviously in Cherry Creek, those rooftop at the Halcyon and rooftop at the Jacquard. I mean, all these, that's just an amenity that people like to get up on a roof and see the view.
Yeah, I originally wanted to do an activated rooftop. It kind of came down to this historic building's inability to carry the load of that on the 4th level. And then the other side of the new build as well, it became much more expensive to kind of activate the rooftop up there. And we knew we wanted to, certainly needed and wanted to activate the first level. So it became a question of would we get enough programming that we could not only activate level 1, but activate level 4. I wouldn't say that well, it's a little late in our design to do it now, but I do appreciate those comments. And maybe if there's ever a phase 2, 5, 6 years down the road, maybe we can do something small in the back there and take advantage of those views. Unfortunately on this, we just don't have any plans for any rooftop.
Yeah, I would second that as well. This is Dean again. I've been to both Halcyon and the Jacquard's roof, or Halcyon's roof, and a couple of the roofs over there, and you would have unparalleled views down Colfax
Yeah,
with the mountains. If there was any way to change your plan on the new building, since it is new construction, to even have a small space up there, because even the Jacquard space is not very big. They have a pool on top, but the actual bar area is not very big, but it's pretty phenomenal views of downtown from up there, even for, 50 people or whatever.
Okay. Well, I probably want to take that question to our architect and see if there's room up there that can be sectioned off that's not in use, and if the load could support it.
Yeah.
And most importantly, if the egress, off and on the roof could be supported without much change, then maybe that's something we can pivot to.
Yeah, because I know people do intentionally go to those rooftops specifically to go have a cocktail at sunset and stuff like that. So,
I agree. Yeah, I'd probably look back on that and say that might have been a missed opportunity, but maybe not. Maybe we'll have an opportunity.
Let me break in for a minute, Maggie.
I'm just wondering, I know that you've spoken to us and you've talked to South City Park, but have you talked with the other RNOs that are around there? The Pinnacle has its own RNO as well, and they're definitely affected by this.
Yeah, I did reach out to the Pinnacle, was not on their agenda. I don't remember what the reason for that was. It was over a year ago. I've met many times with the Bluebird bid, and I've also met with Chun. And I'm meeting next week with the board of Chun again. And then what I'd like to do is kind of do a final RNO meeting with the Chun RNO, not just the board, as well as anybody that's also still wanting to have the final update from City Park. Same information I'm sharing with you all tonight.
One thing I noticed was the neon on the west side of the building.
Mm-hmm.
How is that going to affect the neighborhood in that respect? I can see that it would probably be pretty visible to those homes that are within that.
Yeah, so kind of looking back at that sign, it's on the
west side of the building.
Southwest.
It's facing towards the coffee place, the Starbucks. So actually the light would be going straight down Fillmore, and in some respects down Detroit as well. The edge is close to Colfax.
Yeah, we probably, I would hope that it would not shine towards the neighborhood, and that would be a problem. It would definitely be shining west directly onto probably the Starbucks location, and then further up Colfax Street. It is somewhat shielded by the stairs. These are just thoughts right now. This isn't baked in on having that neon sign there. Perhaps a light study would be warranted, or certainly at the very least talk to the neighbors that surround it. We wouldn't want to invest in a neon sign that was more distractive. Our hope was we were looking at that as a proud way to say, here we are on Colfax of the community, and just to draw attention to just a really cool, fun hotel. But, if it becomes a distraction, and if we do further research along that and becomes an issue, then I don't see why we would continue with that. So we can look at those things as well.
Do we have any other questions out
Just
there?
quick question. So what type of licenses have been approved for the building as she sits right now? And are you going to be requesting any new licenses?
We have not applied for a license, neither a liquor license or a restaurant. When we get into construction, we will, but it'll be typical restaurant slash bar within a restaurant type of licensing for this.
Cabaret for the
No.
performers? No?
I guess it would depend on what a cabaret license governs. If this were to become, if a cabaret were to become an extensive type of, if it meant that this would be more than just a nighttime lounge activity, then I think we'd probably want to be considering what that means. I guess a question for you on everybody on this call is what would you like to see with regard to the activation? Is there more of a lean towards keeping it kind of as we described it, or is there more of a, hey, maybe from 10 to 11 or 10 to midnight, it might be more active, and what that could feel like? Again, a lot of this programming is just, we're in the early designs of the programming. It's really the building that we've got created, but the programming that goes along with it, these are just ideas we have right now.
Have you thought about workforce housing? We have, yes, we have so many people who work along Colfax, who are in the restaurant business trying to come back into it, who have no place to live. Have you thought about having something similar to what's down at the First Avenue Hotel on Broadway, where they actually cater to the people who are working in that area?
Do you mean that question in lieu of a hotel, or?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So yeah, we actually went down that path quite extensively. We had an apartment project that was a couple hundred room key apartment workforce housing project, and we were working with HUD. And at the end of the day, HUD declined our application. So it caused us to pivot away from workforce housing. They told us in their decline that Colfax couldn't support $1,200 rents, and we were looking at $1,200 rents for the pro forma. So we were looking at micro housing at this site, and then we so that the HUD project went away. This was about 2 years ago. This is kind of why it's been taking so long to get here.
Is that the place that's on Colfax in Detroit?
No, well, those are other properties that were built and sold, but those are
right. But I was just wondering, because I know that some of those, I think, were micro apartments.
Yeah. So Maggie, think that's what we were going to build here, and we were going down the path of HUD until HUD declined the application. It took about 9 months and a lot of investment of time, effort, and energy and money to get that decline. So that put everything on pause. And then we went back and looked at this as a kind of a low income housing project. So I reached out to a consultant on whether or not this would be suitable as low income, qualifying for tax credits. And the reply was, it's not large enough. It's a competitive environment for low income tax credits. And if you don't have experience in that competitive field, you're really at a disadvantage of that. And then there was comments about the room size, because we couldn't increase the room size beyond the 250 square feet that they are today, because then we'd be impending on the window placements. So, and I've got an email back from the low income tax credit consultants that kind of articulate why this wouldn't work. So those are both housing options that we were really actually pretty pursuant of up until about 2 years ago. And then we decided maybe we need to go back to the well and look at this as a historic hotel and clean it up as such. And that's ultimately the way we went. Now it's down the road. We can't pivot back to that. We're essentially nearing permit, and that would be a complete pivot away from the existing project programming. But great questions, and yes, we certainly looked at that and understand.
I have just one more question. Do you have financing yet, and where would you get that financing?
Yeah, we do have financing. We had a lender on the hook to finance this in March of 2020. 4 days later, they pulled the financing. They came back to the table a month ago So we have gotten our financing arranged from a lender in Texas, and we're working with a PACE lender. So between the two loan facilities, we are a funded project.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
don't have any more questions.
Thank you, Brian. This will be recorded and we'll post it on our website for anyone who wasn't able to see it tonight. We have a second speaker tonight. Mayor Webb is going to speak to us. Welcome, Mayor Webb. Is going to speak to us on the initiative Yes for Open Space, which will be coming up on the ballot in November.
Mayor Webb.
Maggie, he is in, right?
Yes, I let him in.
Okay.
Yeah, she let me in.
Okay.
I did.
Hi.
It was the old man misdoing, and my granddaughter's not here.
Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We've had a few technical difficulties
Yeah.
earlier as well. So
Well,
thank you. And
I thought it was me. First of all, let me say what a pleasure it is to be back. Congress Park, right?
Yes.
Very, very special. The Chancellor of University Hospital wanted to run me out of town once because he wanted to expand University Hospital across Colorado Boulevard. Some of you may remember that, and some of
I
you may
do.
not. And I said that we weren't going to let the university expand past Colorado Boulevard, and that they would ultimately find better location, which they did in Aurora, which I think turned out good for them. And it also turned out well for Congress Park because they didn't come in tearing all the homes down and tearing down the neighborhood. The issue that I've been campaigning for as a volunteer and joining a lot of other volunteers against a developer that wants to develop the last vestiges of a open space park, which has primarily been used as a golf course in the past, is the Park Hill Golf Course. And we're asking neighborhood organizations and people throughout the city that since this space was bought for by city money, citywide money, that this issue is actually broader than one neighborhood. The issue is whether we as a city want to take a stand and say that we value grass and open space over concrete. The developer wants to put supposedly affordable housing in, which on that space can only become ghettoized because of the number of units that would be required for him to recap the $23 million he bought for property appraised to $3 million. So we're asking people hopefully to join us, because if they do this to the Park Hill neighborhood, they can also do it to yours. They want to run roughshod over a conservation easement, which basically says if you're going to develop this property, it has to be for open space or recreational purposes. I don't want to continue to see just a golf course there. I want to see a soccer field there. I want to see a running track for boys and girls for track. I also want to see even a pickleball court, which I understand is the new sport nowadays, which I haven't learned to play yet. But I think what's important is I think that the city's tilting, and we need to tilt it back to the center, saying that grass and open space is a value that's very important to us. Developers spent $289,000 to get the signatures necessary to put on a petition that actually replicates 301. 301 says we support open space, we support the conservation easement. The initiative 302 that the developer has put on the ballot basically says that the conservation easement can be not abided by, and we can do commercial development. And the language in the two initiatives is just about the same. I think that they believe that people in Denver are pretty gullible, that they can't read the difference between the two. 301 is for open space and grass. 302 is for commercial development. Denver's 155 square miles. This area is less than a half a square mile. And we hope that it would be maintained as open space, green space, and that other neighborhoods, when they have these kind of issues come before them, that all of us would band together and say that too much development's good, but there's a time when we need to stand up and fight for parks and open space. That's the short version. And I'll answer questions if you have questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
So a quick question. Thank you. Thank you for presenting for this. And I was at INC when you talked about this before. I don't necessarily want you to speculate, but what is going on here? A private developer was able to buy the land, and there's rumors that the Parks Department basically said, we're going to figure out a way to get rid of this protection. The city is against this. We're going to get rid of it so it can be redeveloped. What is going on?
I don't, I try not to figure out all of the intrigue of what goes on with the city and developers. And all I know is this, is that we put a conservation easement on that property to preserve it. The city council then put another conservation easement on it to preserve it. Then a developer came along, and he first started in Southwest Denver when they bought Loretta Heights. And one of the first things they did there was what they said they weren't going to do, is going to leave it pretty pristine. And they tore down 186 trees to begin their development project and planned spaces for 544 cars. On the Park Hill site, they didn't think anyone would stand up to them. And I guess we're just at a senior citizens age where we don't think it's appropriate just for someone to come in and just because they have the money, for a developer and the administration to push this kind of development in place of repealing the conservation easement, which has not been repealed, and trying to convey to neighbors that people in other parts of the city don't have a say. But people in other parts of the city purchased this property. It's part of your taxpayers that purchased it. And so the developers have gone out and hired some young men to come in and say, we think this is a neighborhood issue. Except they didn't do that very well either, because most of the young men they hired to come in and speak for them all live in Aurora. They don't even live in Denver. Many of them I watched grow up and they moved out of the city. And so basically what I'm doing, along with Penfield Tate and Sheila McDonald and Tony Pickford and Woody Garnsey and others is saying, and Dick Young, is saying that let's just take a stand on this. So many times big development, big business, big money runs over little people. Well, let's take a stand and send a message to everyone that we all count. We all have a voice. We all have a vote. We're all going to make that vote known in November when we vote yes for 301, which is for open space, and we're going to vote no for concrete.
Here, Webb, are there other conservation sites you could tell us about that could potentially be threatened if this were voted in?
Well, not in the city. What the city has done a good job of dedicating many of the parks, but there is parkland like in North Denver. I was with Dennis Gallagher this morning, and he was speaking for 301 and against 302. There's some parks, Zunai Park and a couple other parks that are actually not owned by the city. They're owned by the Denver Public Schools. And what they're trying to do is preserve those parks for parks and open space, and saying that we don't want those neighborhood parks that are being used as parks now to be developed for commercial use. And so basically my message is if they do it to Park Hill, they'll find a way to do it to you.
Thank you. Do we have other questions?
Charles, did I answer your question? I mean, I don't know the backroom intrigue between the city and developers. I'm not in that.
I don't think I asked the question, but
I'm sorry.
The answer would be interesting. My question is there a way to get both? To please a lot of people with pickleball and affordable housing? There's got to be a way to do it effectively and even make it award-winning. If it's used effectively, you know, and creatively. I mean,
It's a
golf
nice,
is
it's a
golf
nice
is a
thought.
single dimension and it's just for golfers, right? But if you
Yeah,
make it
I don't think
appealing,
you think you can build affordable housing in Denver?
well, I mean, miracles. I guess miracles do happen, but I mean, it's got to be a way to build something where even the people that are working there are taken care of.
What do you mean?
People living in it can take, you know, are working. Their employment is taking care of the whole development. There's got to be a way.
The development will be soccer fields, pickleball courts, lacrosse, and a running track. Denver has 155 square miles of land. We're saying that one half a square mile should be left exempt and not be developed into commercial development. And that developer can develop in other parts of the city if they so choose.
Okay, I mean, I'm all for soccer and pickleball. I just know there's a big need.
Well, there is a need for affordable housing, but why are you going to put it there? I mean, you know, my wife told me once that we need to do some expansion on our house, and she had 2 or 3 different items. You know, at some point, you can't put everything you want in one space. And I'm saying now we have to take a stand. And I know some people don't like doing that. This is not where you can please everybody. You have to make a decision. Grass and open space or concrete.
And
Charles, it's going to be one or the other.
And Charles, it's also a large intact space that has been open space. And it's an opportunity. I mean, it was too bad the city didn't purchase it outright, but it's an opportunity and a legacy for the future to keep something like that open, because once it's developed, you're never going to have that space again. That would be my concern.
Woody, I know you want to jump on here, so go ahead.
Yes, I'm Woody Garnsey, and I've been working with the mayor for, going on since mid-2019 on this issue, and even before that, we've been working on it. But one thing that's really important for people to understand is that under a conservation easement, that we're thankful to the mayor for having been wise enough to support back in 2000 or back in 1997, cannot be just in piecemeal broken up. A conservation easement is created under state law. It's governed by state law. What we're trying to do with 301 is to add an extra layer of protection to the conservation easement to say that city voters should have their say. But under state law, a conservation easement currently can't be just broken up piecemeal. No square foot of a conservation easement can be terminated without now a court order that says that based on changed conditions on or surrounding the land, it's now impossible to continue fulfilling the conservation purposes of the easement, which are recreation and open space. So the idea of a negotiated compromise, which is appealing to some people, isn't legally practical, number one. And number two, as the mayor said, there's plenty of undeveloped land and underutilized land east and west of the Park Hill Golf Course land. We've done some research on the assemblages that real estate speculators have already done in the area, particularly around the 40th and Colorado light rail station. And they are looking to do a massive, dense development on that land. And if people want to put affordable housing in that neighborhood, that's where it ought to go. And the people who are going to live in those dense developments are going to need open space and recreation.
Have you seen the amount of space available going out to Denver International Airport owned by the city? I think there's a lot of space to build housing if one really is dedicated to doing that.
Does anyone else want to make a remark or ask a question about this proposal?
Vicky, this is Dean. Just real quick comment on it.
Sure.
First of all, thank you for letting me join. I'm actually from East Cheeseman, but we're a fairly small group, so I jump on Congress Parks because they're much bigger and more organized than us. But and I find it to be more informative to come to some of these. Anyway, my comment is I've been in Denver for 31 years now, and I was unfortunately the recipient on the bad end of Amendment 2 when it was passed, and a lot of it, people recall there was some very confusing language. People thought they were voting one way, voting the other. How, and this I guess is to Mayor Webb, what is the best approach to when the election comes for people not to be confused on what they're voting on? Because
Well,
I'm a fairly intelligent person, I think, but these things tend to confuse the public and people, and I just don't know how the messaging is going to get out there to really say, this is what this one is and this is what this one is.
Well,
For the
I remember
different
when
initiatives.
Amendment 2 passed, because there were a lot of tears that night, and some of them were mine as well. And I remember that we didn't think people would support it, but the language was confusing. And that's the reason the developer went and put 302 on the ballot to confuse the voters this time. So many people would say, well, we'll vote for 302 because that's parks and open spaces as well. But really, they put that on there to destroy the attempts for those of us that have been honest and above board, saying that 301 is the one that is for parks, 302 is for the developer. They have the money, they have the backing of the city administration, and we're just a group of volunteer citizens trying to protect what we consider to be something important to the city as a value. We value parks and open space. I wish I had a great answer for you because I hope that people aren't confused about 301 and 302. So basically, I tell people, if you're for parks and open space, vote for 301. If you want concrete, then you want 302.
So is the message as simple as, because believe me, I'm aligned with you, Mayor Webb, on this whole thing, that the message is vote yes on 301, vote no on 302. Is it that simple? Is that the message that needs to get out?
I think so.
And Dean and anyone else in the meeting, they have yard signs, and there is an amazing amount of, well, maybe not amazing, but there are a lot of neighbors who simply don't know about this. So anyone who would like a yard sign, please get a hold of me and I will make sure that you get one. I think the key is this meeting, other meetings, opportunities to just raise the issue. Dean, you raised a great issue about Amendment 2 and how easily people are confused. So if anyone knows anyone or would like a yard sign to help support dissemination of information, let us know.
Thanks, Vicky.
Anyone else?
I appreciate the time to interrupt your meeting and make this small presentation in hopes that we provided some insight. And obviously there will be some that will say that site's big enough for 3 or 4 things. And I don't think so. And I think the majority of the city council has already said, people like Paul Cashman and others have said, you can't divide that site the way that the developer wants to develop it. It's not feasible. And we don't think it's feasible conceptually or practically. And then you start asking the question, what's the real deal here? Why would a developer on a site that's been appraised by the city for $3 million spend $23 million? Now they must know something the rest of us don't know. I don't know what that is, but I sure would like to.
Mayor, let me just chip in. One thing we do know that's public record is that the developer has admitted it put $25,000 into the anti-Jamie Gillis campaign during the runoff between the mayor and and himself. And I think we can draw a lot of conclusions about what kind of winks and nods the mayor gave to this developer before the land was purchased in July of 2019. I just put into the chat the website for our effort, which is yesopenspace.org. We have a lot of information about what we're doing. You know, as Vicki said, you know, we're in a David and Goliath fight. This developer will probably spend at least $1 million fighting us in the next 6 weeks. We have a pretty modest budget. We need to raise money. And on the website, people can make donations by clicking on the donation button. And there's information about our effort to get yard signs out. Anybody who's interested in that, Vicki said she would take your information. We're in the process of identifying people who will take yard signs for themselves and hopefully take, you know, 10 or 20 other yard signs that they'll get on the lawns of their friends and neighbors and colleagues. So please join us in the fight.
Karen, I think,
Vicki, let me just close on this 1 minute.
sure.
I've been in politics most of my life. I've been in a lot of campaigns, backing candidates, backing issues, and a lot of times, some you fight for and you vote and you win, and you felt okay, but you didn't really get that feeling like, I'm really happy that we stood up and we took a stand, and here the little guy beat the big guys. And I think it would be really great for Denver people to feel that way once. We haven't felt that much lately. Wouldn't it be great for us to feel that way again? Thank you.
Yes, it would. Karen, go ahead and ask your question.
I'll have to unmute now.
Am I there?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a comment and a question. First of all, I find it amazing that as we go around the city, and I'm talking about Maggie and I, and here we are shopping down by what used to be people down there at Harbor Freight that know all there is to know about what's happening at Park Hill. And they know that it's a reference to what's going on, sadly, on the Loretta Heights campus. All the trees that were cut down and everything. I think we ought to be aware that that's the same developer. I don't think that a developer is going to change any. I don't think that that developer is going to all of a sudden decide, oh, Park Hill ought to keep its trees. It ought to keep things. I don't think so. I think it's very sad. And I would also miss the Fox up at Park Hill Golf Course. They were a fascinating little piece of wildlife that we happened to enjoy when we were playing bad golf. So I don't need a golf course there, but I certainly don't want to see more cement.
Thank you, Karen. Does anyone else have remarks they'd like to make?
Yes, this is Jessie, and I just want to say the chat is only open to the 2 hosts. So if you've been putting things into the chat, the rest of us can't see it. And unless your Zoom works differently than it does for us at church, when you're recording, the chat isn't recorded. So if there are things in the chat that should have been communicated out to people, they haven't been.
Jesse will publish that. We do that for a reason sometimes, but we will publish that, and we'll also put references to the website that Woody put in.
Okay, thank you. And also, I think District 10 has a meeting next week on homeless processes here. So if you're interested in that, that may be one you want to sign up and listen on that Zoom call. I am relieved to see that the whole homeless group that was directly across from my front door left, and when 2 tents showed up, the city was instant about getting those 2 tents back out of there, and now the entire strip is full of rock, and I guess that's the end of the tents.
Jesse, thank you for bringing up that meeting. Is with Chris Hines on the 21st, I think between 6 and 7 o'clock. I'm sure you can go to his website and register. All that's true. Well, everyone, I think that ends our meeting tonight. Thank you, Mayor Webb. Thank you, Woody. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join us. Again, this was recorded and it will be on our website. So thank you, everyone, for attending, and have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.